You take any old brush, any old paint, and put it on a canvas, it's going to look amazing. Like just any brush stroke just looks incredible. It kind of comes from all of my experience with doing card art over the years, like doing the magic cards, is that, you know, all of our paintings need to read at 2 inches wide. So I'm always hyper aware of like, okay, how do I make this read at 2 inches wide? Mm-hmm. Everything needs to be crisp and clear and exact. It's fun to like break all the normal color rules of like, oh yeah, you can't have that many colors in a painting. And this was just kind of like, yeah, I can totally put any color I want in a painting and still make it work. I spent pretty much the whole time in Googling images of this, photo bashing it in there, you know, trying to get it all photo real. And it was just, the paintings looked great and they were happy and I was just miserable the whole time. When a painting starts to get too much wet paint on it, putting more paint on it gets really difficult. The painting is, any brushstroke you put down is probably going to blend a fair bit with what you've already got on there. And eventually it just kind of becomes a sloppy mess. My idea with lighting is you can kind of get away with whatever you want if it looks cool enough. Mm-hmm. Like people won't really think that much if it looks really cool. I like the versatility of gray. It's that whole like relative color thing where you put it against a red background and gray is suddenly going to look like this really cool color. You put it in a blue scene and suddenly it's a really warm color. And I love just getting to play with that in a painting. And then you start really looking at it. You do a lot of figure paintings and you're like, oh no, there's purple there, there's red there, there's green. Yeah, like oh, there's yellow, there's every color in there. And you start doing that with landscapes and you realize like, oh yeah, that happens in landscapes too.
So we have another interview with Noah Bradley, and he is a experienced concept artist, digital painter, and fine arts painter, which is what I actually really enjoy seeing the most. That really perked my interest were your oil paintings I saw. I was like, these are incredible. I don't know if necessarily you would personally label yourself as a concept artist, but from what it sounds like, but you're a digital artist. But you also worked on, I saw you did the Magic Gathering cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did Magic for many, many years.
That's really interesting. You're the first person I've ever met or even knew who did stuff on with those cards. Like, how'd you get into that?
I actually got that one straight out of art school. I was maybe a month out of art school, and I did, of all things, I sent the art director a postcard with my art on it. Obviously, I graduated, 15 years ago. It was a little bit less online back then, and I sent him a postcard. Was like, hey, I'd love to work for you. I had already started to like go down the specialization of landscapes and environments, and yeah, he took a shot with me, gave me some cards, and I got hired with them for probably about 10 years.
That's cool. I saw that you studied at VCU, was it?
I did.
Which is hilarious because I'm actually from Richmond, Virginia.
That's so cool.
I had plenty of friends from VCU and had to play against. I did tennis in college, so I had to play against VCU.
Cool. Oh, nice.
I've been over there many times.
Yeah, I loved it over there. I went to a couple schools before that, but ended up graduating from VCU because I'm local here to Virginia, and so nice, cheap state school that also happens to be really good at art. So
yeah, VCU is definitely known for their fine art, digital art. I don't know about their CG stuff, but
I think they were trying to push it, but at the time, the digital side of things was pretty rough. Like I remember my first digital painting class there, and the guy was a great guy. He was a great artist, great illustrator, but really old school guy and had no idea how to digital paint. And one time he had a missed class or whatever, so it was just us in the classroom, and I went ahead and just showed everyone, like, here's how you actually digital paint, like here's how brushes work. Like nobody had figured out pressure sensitivity on anything.
What year was that?
So that would have been, I graduated in like 2011, so I would have been doing that back in like 2010 or something. So they were a little bit slow, a little behind the times. There were some that were doing it, but it was a little less common.
I remember actually applying there when I was I didn't apply. I remember my mother telling me, you should check out VCU. from just to go there after high school. I graduated high school. That was 2005. So, yeah, and I remember them saying they did a teeny bit, but it wasn't that much. So back then, it was very difficult to find anything with CG related.
Oh yeah,
like that's why I ended up just going to Noman after I graduated. I went to George Mason and then left to go to Noman. And George Mason didn't give me anything for CG really. Like it wasn't going to
no, especially like, I mean, most of the East Coast schools at the time was, like there was a lot of the like editorial and book cover stuff. There was a lot of those people, all the New York stuff and publishing. But as far as like movie industry, CG work, like, it was pretty rare.
Yeah, I heard. I remember one of my teachers at Nolan was telling me that the East Coast is all about your feelings and fine art stuff. So, but doesn't actually teach you design. It's just But then on the West Coast, literally teaches you how to draw the anatomy, the design, how to give an image to someone to actually comprehend it and read it.
Right.
So it's like. Come on, can't you just merge the two? But whatever.
Be nice.
Yeah, right.
Find some Midwest school that somehow merges both of them. It's like, all right, we're going to put everybody in like Kansas. And
and it's cheaper to live there too, especially now.
Yeah, just meet in the middle.
Yeah. So were you drawing your whole life or?
Yeah. I back when I was teenager and even before that, I was drawing and stuff. And it was kind of like a fun hobby that I picked up. And I never thought I'd do it professionally. It was just a fun, cool thing that I liked doing. As a kid, you're looking for something that gets you approval and sets you apart. So it was just that thing for me. And so I would draw, but never really had any intention of taking it seriously. Not until I was about 18. That's when I was like, all right, maybe I'll take a shot at doing this professionally. That would be kind of cool. And that's when I got really serious about it.
That's cool. Yeah, I think I saw one of your older drawings of figure drawings. I think it was yours. So, and it was not up to par of where you're at now.
No.
So was there a moment where you realize, okay, it's clicking? Because it happened to me where all of a sudden just things clicked. Was there a time for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It was probably sometime around 2009, 2010. And that's sort of actually when I dedicated myself to landscape work. Because for all that time before, I always had this idea, I'm going to be a character designer, I'm going to be a book cover illustrator, all this sort of stuff. And my figurative work was always kind of lagging behind. But I hated landscapes. Environment work sounded super boring to me, had no interest in doing it. But then I tried it out some and I took to it super quick. I just had a natural knack for it. It played up to all of my strengths in art already and hid all the things that I was bad at. And so it all sort of clicked into place right around then. And I went from doing my first landscapes to doing my first paid illustration gigs doing landscapes in about a year. So it was this super quick turnaround of, oh my God, I already have a portfolio and I'm getting work.
Wow. So you were always just doing contracts, because you mentioned that before we pressed record, you said you were never in studios specifically.
No.
It was just always freelance contracts.
Yeah, I got, one or two offers to work in-house, but never actually accepted them because I got my first freelance work when I was still in school. It was, before my senior year. And so my whole senior year, I was already freelancing. So by the time I graduated, I was already earning, a full-time income from art. And so I got some of these first offers because I'd apply for jobs and stuff, because I always liked the dream of working, at a game studio, film stuff, whatever. But seeing what they would pay me was pretty similar to what I was making from freelancing. And I was like, I don't really like the idea of going to an office every day. I don't like the idea of that many hours and stuff. I'm really lazy. I really don't like, that much consistency in my life. I like a lot of freedom. And
I mean, you're an artist.
So no.
What do you expect?
Come on,
you're gonna have some.
Why are we office workers suddenly?
Yeah, it takes a different type of artist, I feel, to be in the game and VFX world. It's like a hybrid of techie plus artistic, which is just a unique breed. Because artists they're quirky personalities, quirky life stories, quirky interests and whatever. So being stuck behind a desk or in a well, I guess technically they aren't really cubicles at these studios, but like, stuck to a specific schedule goes against everything their soul probably screams,
Yeah. I am not a 9 to 5 guy. Just never have been. Doesn't appeal to me. I think I would have done well if I had forced myself to do it, because I always missed out on having other artists around.
Yeah.
That was the one drawback, is I was always, at home in a studio, whatever it is, alone, just doing my thing. And I always missed having other people around.
So that's actually really big point that you're saying right there, because now we live in a remote world, right? And I've been working remotely out of Tennessee for, I guess, the last 3 years or so, maybe 4, whatever. So it's just, it's amazing. I love it, but there's definitely missing that lack of camaraderie of person to person, having artists next to you talking. Yeah, we chat, we have video, but it's not the same.
No.
It was actually really cool to see my team for the first time in person. We had a work event in LA just not too like a couple of weekends ago to celebrate the 5-year anniversary of Apex Legends. And it was just so cool to see everyone. So I miss it. They do have the hybrid work where if you do live in those areas, you can go in like once or twice a day. But I'm done with the city life.
I hear you.
Just not into that stuff. All right, cool. So how did you go from digital painting to oil painting? Because that's super fascinating. It's amazing work. I think I've seen the comparisons between your oil paintings and a digital painting, and I like your oil paintings more. It feels a lot more rich.
Thank you. I love the oil painting stuff. So I started as an oil painter. All of my early education was in oils. My first painting classes, everything I learned was pretty much in oils. Digital was a pretty late comer to my education. And so for a long time there, I was pretty convinced I was going to be an oil painter, and that's how I was going to do all my illustration work and stuff like that. But at a certain point, as I picked up digital, I was able to get nicer, cleaner results with the digital work. So I just switched to, all right, I'm going to do digital paintings for the sake of my portfolio.
We also have edit undo.
Right. I mean, it helps, but honestly, I don't use it as much as I should, because I'm so like traditional oil painter. I paint on one layer.
One layer.
I'm just, I'm painting like I paint. Like if I got to remove something, I'm going to paint over it, and I'm not too scared, because I'm like, I have this traditional painting mindset. Like I'll use the tools and I know how to and all that, but for the most part, I'm painting still pretty much the same way I would. And so for a long time, I was just doing digital, but actually it was kind of the magic stuff that got me to transition back to doing more oils, because there's a whole collector community around magic that they love buying originals. And they buy originals for quite a lot of money. And I was like, ooh, that sounds nice. I'd love to make more money, because there's only so much money to be made from actually illustrating magic cards. The rates are not that great. The advantage of working for Magic is A, the access to the fan community and all the secondary stuff you can make from that. And then B, being able to sell these originals, because the originals can go for, tens of thousands of dollars.
Wait, so you're saying original card or your original painting from your computer?
No, the original painting.
So they they don't have copyrights over it?
They have the copyright, but you are specifically allowed to sell that original.
Holy crap. You can't do that. There's a lot of times you're working something on the studio and then they cancel the project and you can never show the world.
Right. And to be fair, that happens. I have 8, maybe, probably 8 or 9 magic cards in my basement right now that have never seen the light of day, never will see the light of day. And they are beautiful oil paintings that I could sell for a lot of money. And I'm really annoyed that I don't get to sell them, but they're just sitting there. And so they're in this limbo land forever. But typically, when a card comes out, you can sell it.
So what happens if you do sell it?
You just make a lot of money?
No, I mean like the ones that you can't sell in your basement right now.
It's kind of like a weird legal area of like, so I don't own the copyrights to the image because they own them. So technically no one's really allowed to see them. but I own this physical and I have the rights to this physical painting.
Yeah.
So it's really weird. I truly don't understand the full like legal ramifications. Some people have said like, yeah, just go ahead and sell them, see what happens. They're not going to sue you. At the same time, Hasbro might sue me. It's like, I don't really want Hasbro to sue me. So for now, I'm just holding on to them, and we'll see. But yeah, if anybody wants to buy a painting and not be able to look at it or show it to anyone, yeah, let me know. So yeah, so I started doing that, and that got me back into oils. And for a long time, my oils were still, they felt a few years behind my digital work. I just couldn't quite get the same refinement. I couldn't quite get the same level of finish to them that I could with digital. And so I kept working on them kind of on and off. And then a few years back, when my career sort of exploded, I had a lot more time to do the things that I really wanted to do. And oils was a big part of that. I was like, I would always envision like, okay, 20, 30 years from now, what would I love to be doing? What's the most important thing for me that I would love to do? And oils was definitely one of those. I think I would find a lot more meaning from doing really amazing oil paintings than digital paintings. Nothing against digital. I've done thousands of them, but I really love the feel of painting in oils and having a physical original at the end of the day. And so I started really doubling down on that effort. And it's been a lot of fun. I've gotten to like work on some really large scale stuff, which is just a blast. And there's just something about working in oils that is just so much fun.
Yeah.
I have a lot easier time just focusing on the work, staying at it for hours and hours. And it just feels great. There's just, a smell to oil paintings. There's the feel of the brush. It's a whole tactile experience that you just don't get with digital work.
Is it kind of similar, or I guess it still wouldn't be similar, but is it closer if you're using a Cintiq?
A little bit, but not quite. It just doesn't quite have it.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a different world. There's something about oils. Then I often tell people, like, you take a digital painting and you put a brush stroke down, it's going to look fine. To make it look like good brushwork digitally, you got to work at it. Mm-hmm. Whereas you take any old brush, any old paint, and put it on a canvas, it's going to look amazing. Like just any brush stroke just looks incredible. And that is hard to replicate. Of just brushwork looks amazing every time you do it. It's like, oh, sweet.
Interesting. Well, does it take longer to do the oils versus digital?
Kinda. Hour-wise, yeah, it probably does take a little bit longer, but not as much as you might think. Maybe that's because I'm a slow digital painter or I'm a fast oil painter. I'm not sure, but it's not a huge difference. For me, the biggest gap was always that gap of quality, and also being able to reproduce the oil painting digitally. Even the best scans, the best photographs I've gotten of my work, you put it on a screen, and it just kind of looks
the same. Yeah,
it just kind of looks underwhelming.
I mean, it's the same with any kind of museum. You see it in a book, you're like, wow, but then you see it in painting, it's like, it feels like you're almost like it has different layers and dimensions to it.
Yeah. And an original in person is a whole different experience. And so I'm always like disappointed because I have to upload these like digital images of these paintings, and they're always like, it looks okay. And, so pretty much every time I've had to do like the magic cards and I do the oils, I'd always have to touch them up some digitally just to get them to look kind of how they do in real life, which is kind of a disappointing thing. You just want to be able to scan it and upload it and look great, but it doesn't look the same.
So you actually, is that how you did your cards? You would paint it and then you would put it in a scanner, scan it?
Typically scanning. Sometimes I'd photograph it depending on the size of the piece. I did some pretty large originals for some of them.
Is there a reason why you did it large?
Money. I wanted to make more money from larger originals.
Oh, okay. So that's because they end up getting shrunken down to a little card. So.
At the end of the day. But yeah, I also have an easier time painting larger. I don't have a particularly steady hand, and I have a really hard time painting that tight. And so I know some guys will paint an illustration this big, and I just can't do it. It looks awful when I do it. And so for me, it helps a lot to paint a lot bigger.
Yeah. I've seen videos, concept artists painting with gouache back in
Mm-hmm.
the day. And they're just doing all these tiny little
Oh
thumbnails,
yeah,
tiny little things, and they're
yeah,
incredible looking, like the
oh yeah,
guys from Star Wars. Like wow.
oh yeah, yeah. I don't know how they were doing that stuff. They can get these things to look crisp and
Hmm.
tight and like perfectly rendered, and I'm not that guy.
Yeah. Have you tried gouache?
Yeah, I've done a fair bit of gouache work, just like mostly sketchbook study stuff, but a fair bit of it. And it's a great medium. It's a frustrating medium, but it has a nice look to it.
How would you
I
compare the difference between oil and gouache?
uh, Oil's a lot easier. There's a lot more correction you can do, and the value range is a lot larger. The color and value range is huge in oils, and I'm always frustrated that you can't get the super dark darks in gouache. It really frustrates me not having that value range because I know what I want, and you can't get those deep blacks that you can
Mm.
in oils. And that's always kind of frustrating. It's
Is it
also sort of similar to acrylics and stuff. You can get pretty dark with acrylics, but not quite as dark.
interesting? Can you
Yeah.
combine the two? Is that possible? Like, I really don't know this.
Right. So I'll combine acrylics and oils sometimes. Sometimes I'll start with like an acrylic later and then do oils on top of it. And oils and gouache would be a bit of a pain because you have to seal the surface in some way.
Mhm.
Otherwise, oils kind of eat away at whatever you put them on. And so you'd have to kind of seal over the gouache painting and risk blurring your gouache painting in the process. So that's typically why you don't do that.
Yeah. Okay. Man, that's it's cool to hear that side of the painting. Like, but the thing is that your traditional paintings still are heavily influenced in our digital concept-y type of world, right? Because you use the
Right.
same design, the same look. Typically,
Right.
you see, fine art is more like
Mhm.
big brush strokes, or
Right.
this is very like they look tight, they look very
Mhm.
designed, like they're readable. You're
Mhm.
not doing the photo real stuff, but it's
Right.
still readable. It's something that you see in digital art. So,
Right.
would you ever do a sketch in digital first and then go
Yes.
to?
Yes. In fact, probably almost always, I'll always do some sort of digital sketch because that's sort of my problem with oils is that it's really hard to do. I have a really hard time doing imaginative work straight in oils. If I don't have an idea of what I'm going to do already, it's really hard to do. And part of the reason for that is that it's hard to make large changes in oils, especially as you start to work larger. So for instance, like, you're working on a landscape or whatever, and you need a sky, you paint it blue and you do it in 2 seconds digitally. You start painting a 6-foot wide painting and you need a blue sky. You're going to be there all day.
Okay.
And if you realize that blue is too dark, you're going to spend another day lightening that blue. And it's like, this is a drag. So you
Yeah.
really want to know, like, this is what I want. And sure, you can make big changes slowly over time, but at least having some sort of guide of where you want to go with it is really useful and saves a lot of time.
So it is faster, I guess, to do the digital versus traditional.
Yes. But in some ways, again, the fact that the brushstrokes look so good in traditional sometimes saves me time because you can imply things easier in traditional, I find.
Okay.
Because it's just easier to get pretty textural brushstrokes with like a brush. And so in those cases, I save a lot of time because I get to do certain effects really, really quickly, really easily. It's the other things that just add a bunch of time to it.
Interesting. So okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say? So for the digital, do you do because you came from the traditional background into digital?
Mhm.
Did you start incorporating photo bashing at all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like when that sort of all took off, whenever that was, sometime around 2012 or something, it got super trendy. I got into it and did a bunch of stuff that was photo bashed for a long time. I really liked it. It was great. I didn't. didn't love the process of it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't as fulfilling. I really don't love doing photoreal work.
Mm-hmm.
I always admire people that do, and I like the result. And even when I do it myself, I like the result. I just don't love the process of doing it. Like I had some clients one time, and I sort of had the idea that they wanted stuff that looked like my magic work, that's a little bit more painterly, and then realized very quickly that no, they actually want photoreal work. And I spent pretty much the whole time in Google, Googling images of this, photo bashing it in there, trying to get it all photoreal. And it was just, the paintings looked great and they were happy. And I was just miserable the whole time. I was like, I can't do this. It's not for me. But I did like the process of photo bashing and then painting on top of it and really doing a fair bit of painting, because I found that it made me make different decisions than I would normally. And I loved that about it.
Yeah.
So
that's cool. The ideation part kind of speeds up, and you can happy accidents happen,
Oh yeah. Yeah. I love that about it, and getting to combine that. And I always shoot a lot of my own photos anytime I travel. So I've got a huge reference library that I got to pull from to do all that sort of stuff. So I do love the photo bashing, and I'll still do it occasionally. I haven't done one for a while, but yeah.
Okay. Let's check out your work on ATMO.
Mm-hmm.
Unless there's anything else you want to say about being an artist and being the freelance freedom. I mean, you never worked in the studio. Like,
Right.
do you put your stuff into galleries?
That's a whole thing. Not really. I haven't yet. I have technically been in some galleries and stuff, but very little. I think I have issues with the gallery scene / the gallery market. Most galleries are going to take about 50% of your price on your painting.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's suddenly really rough, because these paintings take me a long time.
Yeah.
If I spend a month on a painting, I need to make a month's income painting. And then suddenly I need to double that if I'm going to sell it in a gallery. And that's tough.
That's 50%. That's crazy.
Yeah. So, I mean, they are bringing in clients and stuff like that. They're bringing eyeballs on your work. The problem is that the advantage of doing it, you don't get as much as you might think, because most galleries will kind of keep their buyers pretty close to their chest. Mm-hmm. They want to keep their buyers. They don't want their buyers to suddenly go and buy directly from the artists. That's sort of a faux pas in that world. Mm-hmm. But I'm like,
well, you now have a following, right? So you can just
So that's kind of my hope, is more to lean on the following, lean on the collectors, and try to sell more directly. Because I mean, I can sell these paintings for half what I could sell them in a gallery and still make just as much money. And then I'm also like, building that relationship with collectors directly, which I enjoy a lot more. I like, meeting up, talking with the guy who's going to hang my painting on his wall.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. I don't want it to be some some faceless person bought your painting and you'll never hear from them. Like that's kind of a bummer.
Well, there's the money laundering going on out there too. So.
See, I just need to get involved with that.
Get that $1 million painting.
Split me in half on that, and we'll talk. Like, that sounds great. You can launder whatever you want, as long as I get a cut of it. That's fine.
Just throw a little. Don't make it as nice looking. This is what they're not into. They're not into the nice quality paint. They're into a tree branch throwing a brush on the canvas.
I got to get into that. Yeah, I'll work on that one.
God. All right, so let's share a screen. All right, cool. So this is ATMO, for anyone that doesn't know. It's basically it's like ArtStation. It's a portfolio site for dedicated environment artists, but I have actually been expanding it to other departments, which is I've done for effects, and I'm actually soon going to do one for characters and creatures, which is you do actual characters as well, but I didn't upload it on here because if it's not ready yet. So it's organized through skill level, and so you can actually see all the senior, student, and whips and everything like that. And it has a black and white button, so people can study the values. of other paintings. So I see it as a reference site as well. So you can add things to your folder library, reference library. If you have a project that you're searching for, you can search for rocks, you can search for sci-fi stuff and just start adding to it. And people are also, if you're open to feedback, if you're working on stuff, you can filter through that, and that means that people are actually looking for feedback to give some harsh criticism or anything on the image. So there's just it's a site that I'm trying to make create an environment for learning and helping each other out, opening up that dialogue and stuff. So as a senior, though, you can also upload other art. So that's actually bugged out right now. So, but you do have eventually. I don't know why there's a bug right now going on with it, but you can upload other artists that you see on the internet. You give them credit. If you don't know their name, you say unknown, and then when that person signs up, they can hit claim, and it populates to their profile. So it won't ever, if it's not your art, it won't show up. Like if someone was looking at your profile, they won't actually see the other artist's work that you're uploading. They'll just see your personal work. This is just to help build the library, so you can see all like the traditional environment concepts, skyboxes, lighting, and everything. So there's other things with the income survey that it's been filling out, and whoever is on there is anonymous, because I like people to know, like, get an idea of how much they're worth. But let's just get into your work. So we'll do search your name. So the site doesn't support AI. Now there's a report AI button on the work over here. So if it's like majority AI, if it's someone's using like 80% AI, just report it, right? I get that, studios now are using AI and people use it for like maybe at the very beginning here and there. And I'm flexible on that because people use it as a tool, which is what it should be. Instead of just like, here's an AI work and it's mostly AI. And it's like, you're not going to get a job with that, because I want to encourage and try to help people to get a job, which I'm actually working on currently with a buddy of mine, actually previously knew with Brandon, building this awesome job list that we're putting together currently. But I also have on the back end to help block AI bots. I'm still working on that, trying to improve it. I would like to have glaze incorporated into here, so to glaze it up, but they haven't responded to me. So if anyone knows glaze, tell them to hit me up, please. So wait, this is your work. You can actually click on your profile if you actually made a profile. You made a profile. You can go in here, check out your portfolios you have in here. Oh, you have the Sin of Man.
Yeah.
Sweet. That's the one that you started out with, right?
Yeah. So it's sort of a personal project that's been ongoing for a very long time now. And it's sort of just, anytime I had a chance to do a personal portfolio piece, I would do some stuff for this project. I'm currently finally writing the novel to go with it. And so hopefully in the next year or something like that, I'll be kickstarting that and publishing it. And then sort of alongside that, I'll finally be publishing in book form all the art that I've done for it and do some more paintings for it. Because it's just sort of a weird project I've just always had on the back burner, but getting a little bit more finalized with things.
What year did you start doing this?
Technically, some of the stuff I even did back in art school would have been for it. That's when I started sort of brainstorming it. So that would be, 14 years ago or something. So it's sort of always been there as part of things. And mostly it's been very background of like, I'll do the occasional painting for it. And sometimes committed a little bit more to it than others. But yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's check out some of these then. This is trippy as hell. I gotta check this out. A little pause in the interview right here, just to remind you to join Noah and create your own personal ATMO profile and build your art portfolio over there. Transfer your other artwork from other art sites out there that are pro AI, where ATMO is not pro AI, and we will support you and protect you from that space. And as we grow and get larger, it'll be the ultimate place for recruiters to find you as they utilize the filtering system that they can use to find the experience level that they want. Please support ATMO, help it grow, and let's get back to it. It's like uh, bubbles, iridescent, whatever,
Yeah, that was
multicolor stuff,
that
huh?
was a fun one. Yeah, it's fun to like break all the normal color rules of like, oh yeah, you can't have that many colors in a painting.
Mhm.
And this was just kind of like, yeah, I can totally put any color I want in a painting and still make it work. And I feel like the black and white is good for this because it shows that the values still hold together even when it's black and white.
Well, this is why it's so important. Understanding value. If your
Yeah,
values aren't working, then the colors won't work.
right.
So you can plop on any kind of color on top of the black and white, and it will
Yeah,
work out. And you just prove this point
yeah,
perfectly. Like this is, like it's wild. You think that it wouldn't still give that depth, but here you
yeah.
are,
Yep.
holds up. So you just randomly just decided, like, you know what, I'm just gonna go wild on the colors. Like, what made you? What was your decision making on the colors? And
Um,
um,
I actually don't know that there was much decision making going on there. I mean, I had this idea for like really kind of trippy transcendental painting, and I was like, all right, what kind of weirdness can I do with a landscape? And started sketching it out and just throwing a bunch of colors in there. And then the painting process for this was just a blast because it's very like, you're zooming in and painting a certain area and dealing with whatever made up lighting color scheme you're going on for there, and then you go to a different part of the painting and it's totally different. Doesn't relate at all, but you just try to tie together all this stuff and balance it out. And yeah.
yeah, it's cool that you got the more detailed, um, tightened up parts up in here,
Hmm.
and then it kind of softens up on the edge, so you help focus the eye in here. What are these blobs?
No idea. No idea. Honestly, no clue. Yeah, very, very visual design
Yeah,
more than thinking about it.
that's really cool. Let's see what's this is more kind of realistic. Well, not
Yeah,
photoreal, but realistic worlds.
yeah.
So
This
you
is a,
got the
this is a lot of photo bashing for this one.
okay.
So yeah.
So this is all digital work. This is not none of this stuff in here is
No, I believe these are all digital.
okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. These are all digital.
So when you're doing these, this is just like it's not like a consistent story going from one piece to the other, or
No, most of them are vignettes, kind of like of the world. Sometimes they'll illustrate a specific place that I have in mind, like for the book. But for the most part, they're just kind of exploring visual aspects of this world that I'm working on. So
cool. It's good. Good perspective and atmospheric perspective. I like this bit in here.
yeah,
Going right into there.
that was a nice photo that I took, and I was like, that river's just perfect. I got to use that one.
Is that from Iceland?
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
looks familiar.
they have those all over the place.
Yeah.
Actually, I think pretty much all the photos that I would have used for this one are from Iceland. So it kind of gives it a bit of cohesion just
Mhm.
using photos from the same place.
I'd love to go to Iceland. I haven't been there yet.
It is incredible. I get to spend a while there, and it is mind blowing.
So what's cool about the site is that you can also get like the full resolution. So there's no
Mm,
limits on it. So you can see it keeps on scaling in. So you can drop the original
mm.
size on there.
Oh, sweet.
And you can also pan it around if it is super big.
Hmm.
But cool. So this is nice with the leading of the eye coming in here, the swooping of the clouds over here, separation of the bright values with the dark over here to really separate the background from the midground here. So this is photos over here.
Yeah,
Photo
there's a
bashing.
bit of photo work, a lot of painting back into it,
Yeah.
but yeah, a decent amount of photo to start with on this one.
So what was you have interesting colors going on in here on the bit of the mountain. What was your thought process?
Just shooting for that sunset look to things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just trying to get that nice like warm, cool contrast. That's it's kind of something I always love in good landscape work is
Mm-hmm.
when you really play up the warms and cools.
Yeah. So how long are these taking you to do?
Um, they vary. But for the most part, these finished stuff takes somewhere between 20 to 40 hours, spread out over quite a while. Again, I'll be working on multiple pieces at the same time, jump in and out, work on them for maybe an hour in a day and then switch, and then work on them for 6 hours some other day. So
this is a perfect example of how you can zoom in and just move around to get the full effect.
Nice.
But if you see, what's nice is that your values and everything and composition works well, that they look more photoreal when they're in smaller thumbnail mode.
Right.
And then you zoom in and you're like, okay, there's a lot of loose strokes, and that's key. I want artists to always remember to always zoom out and squint your eyes as you're working.
Yeah, it's kind of comes from all of my experience with doing card art over the years, like doing the magic cards, is that, all of our paintings need to read at 2 inches wide. So I'm always hyper aware of like, okay, how do I make this read at 2 inches wide? Mm-hmm. Everything needs to be crisp and clear and exact. And so that experience was really good training.
Is there a story here? I see these cool creatures and.
Again, no particular story. This was just more visual exploration of, playing with this
What
world.
Inspired you on this one, though?
What did inspire me?
It's probably an old one, huh? How many years ago was this? You said 14 years?
No, this one's a bit newer. This one's maybe 5 years ago at this point. This was, I think I just really liked the idea of the island shape that I've got there. And I just wanted to make that work. I knew I wanted like this weird little island in a lake. And I kind of built it from there. I liked the idea of this kind of crescent shaped island and wanted to see if I could just do a painting with that in mind.
So are you starting with a loose line sketch first?
I do that more often now. Most of these I actually just start with color. So for this one, I believe I just started with color and worked from there. So I just start blobbing in color and work from there.
Okay. Yeah, it's good. You have the big shape, then you got the medium shapes and the small shapes all in here. So this almost looks like a crocodile, an alligator tail.
It definitely does.
That's cool. All right, let's see what else you got here. This is pretty.
Oh, this was a fun one. This was
I didn't notice these here. That's cool.
Yeah, this was me playing with. So like, I just had a card artist, so everything needs to be clear. This was me playing with, okay, how little contrast can I get away with? How soft of values can I get away with and still make it look really good? And this was a really fun experiment in that, of like breaking most of the rules of values and contrast and stuff like that. And like,
wow, you're right. Yeah, this is all the same, basically same value, but you're just breaking it with color. That's interesting.
Yeah, just like totally breaking that rule of like, can I get away with this and can I make it still look good? Can I put in just a few dark values around the scene and make it all read like a normal scene? And it was a super fun one to do. And I really like the result. It's one of my favorites.
So are you using the same kind of saturation with the colors?
No, a lot of variety. For the most part, I find that, especially to pull off something like this, more grays really helps kind of make it all tie together. I find that the more gray that I can put into my work really makes the few areas that I push the saturation stand out.
That's interesting. So you're just saying with these little brush strokes, they're gray, and then it helps pop the pink.
Yeah. So the more like muted, desaturated stuff I can put in there, the better. And then really go wild with a few areas.
So are you trying to use the gray as the shadows or help with
not form? Even specifically the shadows. In fact, sometimes the shadows have a little bit more saturation in them.
Because this is very diffusely lit. There isn't much of a light direction at all.
Right. So I will, sometimes I'll be using it in the highlights, make them gray. Sometimes the shadows. It really depends. I like the versatility of gray. It's that whole like relative color thing where you put it against a red background and gray is suddenly going to look like this really cool color. You put it in a blue scene and suddenly it's a really warm color. And I love just getting to play with that in a painting. I find that the more that I do that, the more interesting it all looks, and the more the colors really start to work together. I had this bad habit for a long time of doing way too much saturated colors in my work. I think it's something that a lot of people probably struggle with, that you start using color and you get used to color and comfortable working in it, and you just want to go like crazy. And so I ended up with a lot of paintings with just really intense saturation. And I realized there was almost a sophistication lacking in my work. And so I started trying to push for, all right, how can I make this more interesting? And I started looking at kind of old master paintings, and you realize just how much gray they're using, how much like desaturated, muted colors, but you don't really notice that about their work. You notice that, it's still really punchy and powerful. And it turns out you just need a few hits of that around the painting, and it'll all read as very colorful and interesting.
That's a very educational, because I know what you're talking about with the, what they call the color relativity thing. I haven't really thought about it so much when I'm making my stuff.
Right.
So this actually makes me think like, man, I need to start playing with grays some more. I mean, I do use grays, but just like in that, maybe I do think about it. Maybe it just happens.
A lot of it is instinctual. Like once you get comfortable with this stuff, you'll find yourself doing it naturally.
Yeah.
Part of the reason I talk and think about it is that I try to teach this stuff. I try to help other people figure this stuff out. And that's a lesson that you don't really just like naturally stumble on very easily. Like you'll get there eventually, but if somebody doesn't explain to you like, hey, if you put gray in there, it's going to look really cool. Whereas like a lot of people they'll see like, say, bounce light on like a rock and it's in the shadow or whatever, and there's bounce light, and they're like, oh, it looks orange, so I'm going to paint it orange. And I'm like, no, that's gonna be too orange. If you try just putting gray in that shadow, it'll probably look orange enough. And that's kind of like a mind-blowing thing for a lot of people.
So are you saying mix the orange with the gray, or just use gray straight?
Oh, I would just use straight gray. Like, if I'm painting traditionally or something, maybe I would use a little bit, but for the most part, I'm totally okay just using straight up gray.
So I usually think about desaturation, and that was my mindset. It was like, okay, these areas are desaturated, but if I want someone to kind of get their eye to go over into this area, I'll pump up the saturation just a little bit in this area.
Right.
So I wonder if that's kind of similar. Like I wasn't ever thinking gray,
but
just thinking saturation. This one's kind of blowing me away here. It's like the values are so flat. It's really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, the other piece in the portfolio, kind of in the upper right, the yellow one, I kind of tried doing a similar thing of just trying to, again, really reduce the contrast in certain areas and try to really simplify that. And yeah, it's a fun thing to do.
Yeah, this one makes more sense because it's just two colors. So you have the grays and then the orange kind of just glowing up. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And the values are pretty similar in the back. And you also even have a darker back. That's interesting. And it's still working though, because typically, I mean, I guess they are in shadow.
Right.
Yeah, that's cool. Let's go to your other stuff you got here. And by the way, like you mentioned traditional paintings. There's a whole, because like the whole reference thing I got going on. You go to traditional paintings. So yeah, all these old traditional paintings.
Yeah.
As like study, and I just from just collections and other people sending me old traditional painting clients, I uploaded them themselves, and you can upload stuff too as well, just to help build it up, and you can upload your own traditional paintings in here too. So checking out the values like you're talking about, because they're so like bold a lot of times, exactly what you're saying. Like they'll have like dark blacks in the far distance. And you're like, well, that's not supposed to typically happen. Why is it working?
But they make it work. Yeah,
exactly. Like in here, for instance, like it's still technically lighter than the foreground, but you just don't think it'll be that dark, or that little piece right there. That's it's really cool. Hey, let's go back to your with ArtStation. You just have a collage of everything, and it's like it makes me, it's overstimulating. I look at it and it just hurts my brain I just don't want to look at it. And I started this originally because I'm a matte painter, and it was just so hard to find good matte paintings, and it just became such a pain in the butt to find also like the higher quality stuff, like the senior level stuff. So anyway, so this other stuff you got going on here. So here you have more oils, right?
No, these are actually all digital as well, but this is sort of about a year ago, I think it was. So I had this idea that I could get even better at landscape work. I was like, I feel like I'm pretty good at landscapes at this point, but I'm like, all right, what if I dedicate myself to getting back to studies, like back when I was a student and just learning this stuff? And so a lot of these are fairly direct studies from reference images that I've taken, and just trying to work on those skills again of learning new lessons, learning new shape language, learning new color schemes, all this sort of stuff, and trying to then be able to apply that to my work to kind of push it to the next level. So I started doing these things and have been churning out a bunch of them. The last few images are actually imaginative work that is sort of learning from these studies.
Oh, okay, cool. So this does it go in order of
it doesn't.
This looks like a damn photo.
They do sometimes. Sometimes they look a little too deceptively like photos. But yeah, they actually didn't seem to upload in order. So yeah,
you can organize them in your.
Okay, yeah, I'll have to rearrange them.
Yeah, you can just drag them across and they'll organize.
Sweet.
Oh wow! So this was See, this is a perfect example of like loose brushstrokes, but the values and colors perfect. So when it looks like, wait, that cloud is painted cloud. That looks like freaking wow.
No, it's actually pretty roughly painted.
Well, that's the point. That's when you got your shit down.
Yeah.
Nice. Is this based off a photo?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. I changed the foreground a fair bit, but yeah, the most of the background's pretty close.
So how long would this take you?
These are pretty quick. These are like I think they're averaging something like 3 to 5 hours. So they're not too bad. And so I'm trying to do all of these for a book that I'm writing. I'm doing a book on sort of how to do landscape painting, because there's only a few books on landscape painting that are much good. And I really want to do a book on them. I really want to kind of teach people everything that I've learned about landscape painting. And so yeah, I need a lot of images for it. And so I wanted to do some fresh, new landscape paintings. And yeah, and also learn a lot of stuff along the way. Like I'm picking up a lot of stuff by doing these again. I haven't done dedicated landscape studies like this in a very long time. And I'm picking up so many little lessons on like, oh yeah, I wouldn't have thought to use that color there or that shape there. And lots of interesting things that I think I'll be able to pull into my imaginative work going forward.
So with the water or just the base color, like how are you deciding on the base color, then adding the extra color? Like how are you going? The water's so dynamic, so.
Thank you. For all of these, I'm actually starting with kind of a warm orangish sepia tone color, and then painting on top of that. And then it's traditional painting. Again, like I've got these traditional painting roots. So you look at most traditional landscape painting and they'll paint on this sort of burnt sienna, again, a kind of a vibrant orange background.
What's the point of that?
For the most part, it makes a little more sense when you're working traditionally than digitally. In traditional painting, you'll actually have a little bit of that popping through in places. And for the most part, landscapes are going to be kind of blues and greens, and a little bit of orange poking through in an orange and green painting is going to look really vibrant and really pretty. And it helps kill the white of the canvas immediately. So that helps too. But there's a little bit of vibrance that happens from that interplay. And sometimes you'll still see it in my digital work where a little bit of that orange, like on an edge, will still be poking through where I didn't quite cover up, the painting. And so that's kind of where I'll start, and then just start blocking in whatever colors I happen to be seeing. And yeah.
Okay. You're switching back and forth between different colors. Like what's
constantly.
Is there a strategy how you're using the color wheel, like a specific range that you decide, okay, I'm not going to go this far in saturation, or I'm going to just stay with these colors? Or
For the most part, I'm thinking a lot about values, and then I think about within those values, uh, seeing the different hue variety that I can get in there.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the more we progress as artists, the more colors we start to see. Like when you look at like flesh tone initially, you're like, oh yeah, this
Yeah.
I look kind of like
It's
brownish.
pink.
Like, oh, it's kind of pinkish. And
Yeah.
you pick one color and then you start really looking at it. You do a lot of figure paintings and you're like, oh no, there's purple there, there's red there,
There's
oh, there's
green.
green, yeah, like oh, there's yellow, there's every color in there. And you start doing that with landscapes and you realize like, oh yeah, that happens in landscapes too. Like grass isn't just green, grass is bluish, grass is gray, grass is yellow, it's got all this color variety in it. And so that's something that I try to get. So the values are always number one. But within that, if I can get a lot of hue variety, suddenly people are like, oh wow, the colors are great. And really it's just I got the values good and then I added a bunch of hue variety. And that's most of the magic of it.
Interesting. So with, I mean, like what makes it easier with the photo bashing is that you can just take a photo that has all those colors in it
Right.
and then paint on top, but you're not using photos in these. So
no, these are all just strictly painted.
Yeah. So what's, like, are you doing big, you said you start with orange. So is it looking like this orange?
It would be a similar orange dye to that actually. Okay. Yeah.
So you start with orange and then you have like a green, maybe was it this type of stuff, and then you just added like another type of green?
I usually start with some sort of whatever kind of the middle tone is going to be for that. Sometimes it's going to be the light tone, but I try to block in really large light shapes, really large dark shapes, and just kind of get those in the right ballpark. And once those are kind of in the right ballpark, that's when I'll start adding in all this nice variety.
And are you using the transparency brush pressure? Because I always find, I don't think you're using lassos, right? You say you're just doing it traditionally, so you're able to clean up the edges well, but it's like with that transparency kind of leaves some of those soft edges, which is always annoying to do.
So I'm always kind of working back and forth again, trying to go back to my traditional roots of like, to get a clean edge, you paint the thing and then you paint the background and then you paint the thing again and then you paint the background a little bit more until you get that edge, the right level of crispness and softness that you want to get.
So you've been here physically or in these
to all these places? Yeah. I took all of these reference photos myself, and actually I sell and give away a bunch of these reference pictures. That's kind of become a large part of my income, was actually switching over to doing reference pictures for people.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to have to think about that. So you've been here. What is this place?
This is Petra in Jordan.
Petra. Shit.
Yeah, I got to go there. I guess it was last year now. And it was incredible. Every bit worth it to go see it. It is mind-blowing place.
Must have been so surreal to.
And it's a lot bigger than I thought it was. I kind of, you see a few pictures of Petra from a certain angles and you don't get this idea that it's actually this massive place with just hundreds of these cool like carved tomb edifice things, and it's an amazing place.
Yeah, it's unreal that they are able to do that. In real life without like, it can't comprehend it. It's just carving right into stone like that. Crazy. I really like this mood. So you have the stormy clouds, the grays over here, then you got the bright sunlight casting over here and the big shadow casting across here that's not as gray. It's really, you can feel the storm coming. So what was it, because this becomes more saturated in the shadows versus there, is that your thought process, or is it just like
that was to kind of play up the atmospheric perspective there? I'm like, all right, I don't really want significant like blue values there, so I'll just go ahead and desaturate all these warm colors and it'll look a little bit more bluish because of that.
So for this you started with like a neutral kind of orange.
It would have been just kind of a neutral warmish color and then started kind of working into that.
So from all those studies, oh man, that's nice perspective. Shoot.
Oh, this one was a pain in the ass. I love like bird's eye views of landscapes.
Yeah.
I adore them. When they're done well, they're always like, yeah, that's
It's
amazing.
incredible.
But
Yeah.
I always have a hard time doing them. So I was like, all right, I'm going to try to do one. And it was super hard to do. It was such a pain to get like the feel right and to get the landscape to look right, because we're not used to seeing this stuff from this like weird bird's eye view.
Yeah.
And so getting landforms and rivers and stuff to look like they're supposed to look without getting our normal perspective on them, it it never makes sense. And but yeah, I think I pulled it off in the end.
Did you plot perspective lines for it, or was it just eyeball?
I plotted a few bad ones.
Mm-hmm.
I did a few like, this is kind of the 3-point perspective ish, like the vertical lines, and that was mostly enough to get me there. I find that at this point, since I don't really paint much architecture and stuff, I can kind of get by with just eyeballing it. Yeah, I'm a little bit. Yeah, I'm used to perspective enough at this point that at least for natural landscapes like this, I can usually eyeball it.
So you took all these lessons and then you started to apply it to, I guess, this one and
and the other two there at the end. And only in the last maybe couple weeks or something did I start like just playing around in doing imaginative work again. And there was very little planning going into these. This is just like, all right, how do I do imaginative work again? I haven't done this in a long time. Let me see like what kind of things I can pull from. So just without any reference, just diving into this stuff. And it's been a fun experiment.
So what'd you learn on this? Like, what if you were to compare yourself from, before doing those reference studies to painting this digital, what would you say? Like, how would this have looked if you hadn't done those reference images?
Right. So I think I got a lot more comfortable with painting water, for instance, doing all those water studies that you saw. Like, I got a lot better feel for, okay, what kind of colors can I get in there? What sort of values can I get away with there? Also, just like the chaos of reality. Like, there's so much going on when you walk into nature. There's so many different shapes and forms and angles and stuff like that. And for the most part, I was so obsessed with the illustration world and doing card art. And I would do these really simplified paintings because I wanted something that was really clear and easy to read. And I think I kind of held myself back there of like, I can put more things into a piece. I can put a little bit more chaos and other elements going on and still make it work.
Yeah, it's interesting that you made this so purpley.
Mm-hmm.
What was the reason for that?
Thought it would look nice.
Yeah,
yeah. I was like, I think it'll look pretty cool, and I was pretty happy with it. I was like, yeah, that seems cool. Again, I don't have to be photoreal, so I can just do whatever colors I think look right.
Yeah,
and that's the power of using good values, is you can get away with whatever you want.
Mm-hmm. So I see what you're saying with like the chaos in nature. So you have, rocks shaping that way, or that way, and then little petals there, and then the grass is not all going the same direction. Is that what you're implying? All the
everything? There's just a lot of different stuff going on, and honestly, I probably could have pushed it further. Like, I could have added more like trees and stuff in the foreground, and gone even further. But again, these are relatively quick sketches still. They're still only taking me 3 to 5 hours. So they're not like the super refined like 20 to 40 hour paintings that I'll probably end up doing. This is just kind of feeling out like, okay, where am I at with these things? Are these studies helping me?
I mean, it's working. That's cool. A little floaty, broken up rocks there.
Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, like let's like push the fantasy elements a little bit. Like, all right, can I still remember how to do all the fantasy stuff that I used to do?
Yeah, I like that it's all green back here and then just rocks in here. So it's a good contrast to separate it. Let's see this one. There was one that it was kind of similar to this, and I was blown away at how like photoreal it looked.
Yeah. So that was kind of the one that I kept in the back of my mind. Like, I wasn't directly referencing it, but I was like, all right, how do I pull the lessons I learned from doing that one, apply it to a totally different type of landscape? Like, this is like, dry desert sort of landscape as opposed to, the Swiss Alps. And I was like, all right, can I make something that still feels like that without reference? And I'm really happy with how this one turned out.
I love these colors in here.
Mm.
Is that like, what was your, I mean, is cast shadow of a cloud or just breaking up? Like, what's
Yeah,
your,
kind of. Again, like my idea with lighting is you can kind of get away with whatever you want if it looks cool enough.
Mhm.
Like people won't really think that much if it looks really cool.
Yeah.
Um,
I get caught up a lot on like, does this work in real life?
right. And
Yeah.
for the most part, no one gives a shit.
Yeah.
People mostly get called out for having like that lighting doesn't make sense when it looks bad.
Yeah.
If you paint lighting that looks good, people are going to be like, "Oh wow, that looks amazing." And I've never been called out for being like that doesn't make sense. I'm like, "Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I know that. I know not exactly how that would look, but I don't care." Because yeah, it looks cool. And surely you can always say there's a cloud up in the sky. That's the great
Yeah.
thing about
It's
landscapes
just,
is like,
yeah.
yeah, there was one cloud, it was right there. Yeah.
That's cool. You got the orange glows coming up on here for the bounce light, which just makes it more magical.
Yeah, I had so much fun doing that.
Is there a reason you didn't like continue it all the way down here for like contrast reasons, or just like it looks cool?
Uh it kind of looks cool. I also wanted the mountain to be a little bit like set apart from the
Hmm.
cliffs and stuff. Like I wanted design wise, I had this idea in head that it was like, there's all this kind of normal desert, and then there's just this really weird, oddly shaped mountain that doesn't fit in with the rest of it. And it's kind of like a break from the rest of this landscape. And so design wise, that's kind of what I had in mind. I wanted this thing to look super out of place, and so trying to play that up.
That's nice. The light hits up here.
Mm.
So when you have the bright highlights
Mm-hmm.
versus to say lighting it here,
Mm-hmm.
what's what was that? Was it like your to help with like the people listening, like how you're thinking about lighting? Like you're like, okay, this is gonna be super bright. The sun's here, and then are you just saying it's falling off, so it's not as intense,
So that's
or
more, I find that would be a little bit more like reflective rim light and stuff
yeah,
like that. I don't know the exact science behind it, but there's the, what is it, the uh, Fresnel effect.
yeah,
Fresnel effect, that's the one.
hmm,
Where like the more sheer the angle you're looking at something, the more reflective it gets.
yeah,
And so I'm pretty sure like you look straight at the sun and you start to get these little hits of rim light, and they get hyper reflective. And so you
yeah.
get
That's true.
really bright highlights and stuff like that. Whereas you look at, a flat, gritty rock face off to the side, and it's not going to have that reflective quality to it anymore. Because like even these mountains, these cliffs and stuff, you see these bright white highlights. If you were to stand on top of them and look down at them, they're not going to be that bright. They're going to be bright. They're going to be sunlit, but they're not going to be as reflective. So they're not going to
Hmm.
have quite that punch. So that's sort of the thought process behind those.
Yeah, it makes sense. I'd love to see the oil paintings.
Yeah, I'll need to get some of those uploaded.
I made a. Let's see if I can just actually bring it.
Yeah, there it
Yeah,
is.
cool.
There we go.
All right, yeah. So what I like, if you look at this one versus your others, I'm actually you did a digital version of this,
I
didn't you?
did. I don't know if I uploaded though. No,
Oh,
I
I
don't think
have
I
it.
did.
I have it. You didn't, but I have it in the folder where I was trying
Yeah,
to
there you
upload your
go.
stuff. So it's just so rich. There's something like it almost feels like the reflectivity in an oil painting is actually a real reflection, compared to
Mm,
digital.
right.
Is that true? Is that the same sense?
There's like people call it like a pearl or like a gem like quality to oil paintings that are really unique to them, because like you usually are painting on multiple layers and it isn't a flat image. Like you can kind of look into the painting a little bit and the light is going to bounce out of it. So you do get a little bit of like a shimmering quality to an oil painting sometimes, and it's kind of special in that regard. Um, Also, just the way that I tend to paint in oils, my stuff ends up looking a little different than it does digital, because I did this digital one first and then did the oil maybe a few months afterwards. Just as like I loved the old reference image. I was like, this is beautiful. I need to paint this. This is great. And I was like, can I pull it off in oils, to anywhere the same degree? And obviously there were some changes that happened along the way, but I was pretty happy with like, okay, cool, I can do this stuff in oils.
Yeah, like how long? Because you have all like the swirls and the
Mhm.
squigglies. Like, doesn't that take a long time to do?
Again, it does, but it also doesn't. Like, so like the digital study is another one of those, like maybe 3 to 5 hours, and the oil painting I believe was maybe somewhere around 30 hours, something like that.
Oh, okay.
So it is a while, but at the same time, it's a lot tighter. It's a lot more finished than that digital study. The digital study is really rough, really quick. You zoom in and you realize a lot of it's just super messy.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So for me to get that digital one to look like the oil one, it would also take me another 10 or 20 hours.
I see what you're saying. Okay. Interesting. The when you let it dry overnight, because I doubt you're sitting there for 30 hours.
Right. Yes.
Are you able to just go back and paint on it, or do you have to...
Yeah. So there's this stuff you use. There's a few different ones, but the main one I use is called Liquin, and it's basically this weird goop, and you mix the goop into your paints, and it will make them slide a little bit easier for one thing, and it also makes them all dry overnight, which for oils is a huge benefit. I really like working in multiple layers. I like kind of layering my painting on top of itself. And that can be really annoying in oils when they take, a week or two to dry. So I always like using something like this so that I can do those multiple coats and keep working on it day after day after day.
So is there a method for deciding when one coat is going to look like a certain detail, and then you let it dry, and then you go on? It's like, this is the next level of detail. Like, why can't you just go and just do it right away?
I know, right? I wish I could. I often wonder that myself when I'm doing it. I was like, well, why don't you make it look right? I think I had an ex-girlfriend like that who asked me that one time, and she was like, well, why are you doing that? Why don't you just make it look right? It's like, I'm trying. I'm doing my best over here. Like, I'd love to, but so that's part of it. It's just hard, and sometimes you need that. Also, there's the physical reality of the oils themselves. So when a painting starts to get too much wet paint on it, putting more paint on it gets really difficult. The painting is, any brushstroke you put down is probably going to blend a fair bit with what you've already got on there. And eventually it just kind of becomes a sloppy mess. And it's really hard to get edges correct. It's really hard to get details and crispness in there. And so at a certain point, I often have to just like back away and be like, okay, I'm going to come into this later with dry paint and be able to actually get in there.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I figured like because like when it almost becomes like you're going to continuously mix the colors if it's not dry, right? Yeah. If you go in there, you want to like paint some highlights on top of it,
right?
It'll just end up mixing. Yeah.
Sometimes you can really like layer on paint so that it will cover up everything underneath, but at a certain point, it's like, no, I just need this to dry so that I can really get in there.
Cool. See your other ones. This one's cool. Yeah,
that was a beast.
It's so big.
Yeah.
See, my wife is always like, you're an artist. Like, can't you just make something for our house? Like, I guess I could print it, but I don't know how to paint. Like, it's just not the same. Like, I do want to print, but it's just, there's something, especially now that we have AI coming out, right?
Yeah.
Which is going to take the soul out of all design and art and creativity. Like what Jerry Seinfeld said, it's you just can't do it. Is what it's like the acronym for it, or kind of like a saying for it.
Right.
So that's why everyone's jumping on it, because they don't want to go through the pain of learning how to paint this stuff.
Right.
So, but that's just going to be digital until they have robots painting it, which eventually.
Well, we got a long time till
time.
So we're good on that. The amount of payback from getting robots to do paintings is going to be real low.
Yeah.
So there's not a concern there. There's a lot of other things robots could do first before they need to figure out how to paint. So I'm like, all right, we're good for a while. I don't need to do it.
I saw
I don't need to do
robot
it
playing the drums, though.
Oh, that's
it's very mechanical, but it was
but he's still doing it.
He's still doing it. But so like you have the physical painting, and that's almost like you can actually invest in paintings and like ETFs and stuff or fine art. And a lot of people were doing that during COVID and it was pumping up a lot. And that's kind of the thing. Like you have digital paintings, but then you have a physical painting and people, just the average person, I feel respects it a bit more because they can comprehend it more and they can see it and they can see the brushstrokes. Whereas like, I wish we could get that digitally. And it's like, they're like, well, you can just take a photo of it and just duplicate it. How do you know it's the original one? And I guess that's where like NFTs were trying to do, but I don't think that's really
it's a hard thing. And because like people just don't get digital painting. Like digital painting's been around for, I mean, what at this point, 40 years more or less. And people just don't have any idea what it is. Sometimes I'll tell people that, you know, I do digital painting and they'll be like, oh, is that like graphic design? I'm like, no.
I hate, it's so annoying.
It's nothing like graphic design. Like at all. Like not even close. But people are like,
I'm an animator. Oh, you're like, a graphic design artist?
Like, no, that's not what I do. So
like how did graphic design become
people,
so big?
You tell people that you do an oil painting, they're like, oh, cool. I mean, they'll still say like, oh, my kid does that. That's great. But, you know, at least they have some idea of what it is. They get it. It's like, oh, cool. You painted that with paint. Like that makes sense to them.
Yeah. So it's like, it's one of those things that I always admire people that can do this as well. Whoops. How did I do that? Oh, arrows. Okay. Yeah. So this is like the reflections, like it just looks more impressive. But then there are digital artists out there that make it look like is a physically painted thing, but you just, you know, it's like Rudzetsky. He has those like dark, rich colors sometimes that very expressive that make it look like, oh, did he do this like painting?
But now he's doing oil paintings. So
yeah. So I guess he probably just has that background. I need to get him on here and talk about that. This is the thing. Like it just feels so rich. It's just a big, like if you were to paint this digitally, like do you think you could make it look like this?
I mean, it would look nice, I'm sure. And in some fundamental ways, I think it would be a better painting, but it also wouldn't quite have the character that I think this original has. There's just so much visual interest in doing it traditionally that is really hard to capture working digitally.
So you have your paints over here. Is there, you could do a little teaching for me right now. Is there specific brands? Do they get like really expensive?
Some of them do. Some less so than others. Whenever you buy paint, always buy artist grade paint and not student grade paint. Student grade paint is going to use shittier pigments.
It literally says student grade and artist
it usually
grade?
Will say student grade or artist grade. And you want to always get the artist grade. So it'll just be worse paint. It's fine. I did many paintings for many years with awful paint. It's not great. But and certain colors are just going to be more expensive than others. There's certain ones that it's going to be like, you know, $40 for a tube of this paint. Other ones, it's going to be $10 for a tube of paint. And when you paint, you have to try to get that out of your mind of like not being too precious with the paint. Just put it on the canvas. This is what it is. Like, you're using expensive materials here, but it's fine. And then, I tend to work with a pretty full palette. I don't tend to limit myself. A lot of oil paintings are really weird about using stuff like black on their canvas. And they're, I don't know. I love using black on my canvas. So it's fine.
Interesting. Do you start from the back and move yourself to the foreground, or do you just go all over the place?
It depends on the piece. Yes, in general, I will put in the back first, but not too strictly because I'll still plan on working back and forth. Like if I have a really clear separation of like sky and foreground, I'll have to be a little more careful about that. Of like, okay, this is going to end up being really crisp and these are wildly different values. And that's going to be a pain to go back and forth. There's also a little bit more thought process of going back to front with traditional painting. Because you can actually kind of tell where you've painted over something. And so if you paint a foreground and then paint the sky behind it, you can tell that the paint for the background is is on a higher layer than what you painted for the foreground. So you can actually see the physical depth of the painting, and it will always look this much weird to do that in that order. So that's why you'll often see people go kind of more back to front and focus on that. So they want that thicker paint in the foreground because there's a 3 dimension to it that a lot of people won't think about. But actually, you kind of subconsciously realize it.
So since this isn't a gathering, like, are you still selling these pieces to your people that were,
I would love to sell these. I haven't sold many of them, but I also haven't been trying to sell them. Stuff like this piece took me a month to paint. Like painting most days for a fair bit. So it's a long painting. So I need a lot of money to justify selling that thing. Like I did it mostly for myself, but still, like, if I'm going to sell it, if I'm going to part with it, I'd need a fair bit of money. So at this point, I'm not too concerned with trying to sell them. I'm kind of trying to build up a body of this work and see where I can take it. But at some point, I will be kind of pushing the online sales of this stuff. I think that would be a really satisfying way to make oil paintings is to be able to sell them directly to collectors.
You sell, okay, yeah. Does it make a pretty penny with selling these things?
I would hope so.
Yeah, the bigger they are too, is more.
That's the hope. Yeah,
that's interesting. Cool. So, like I was saying before, that you have also character art. So I grabbed this one. This is really cool. What's the story on this? I feel like there's a story.
So there's definitely a story. It's going to be, it's one of the characters in the novel that'll pop up for a little while in the story. So,
cool.
So yeah, they're a character that I wanted to paint. And this is actually just a small-ish crop of a fairly large chaotic painting. So, there's a lot more going on in this scene.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, there's still an environment back there,
right.
So you could post it on environment and character in that stuff. But let's just do. Oh, this was cool because this was your real life situation.
Yeah, getting to do a little bit of plein air painting.
Yeah, and what are you seeing? Like, what do you remember your mindset of, like, because you got these colors, right? Versus these colors,
right?
You decided to cut out the trees,
right?
To get to the rocks.
Yeah.
And you pushed, you stylized the colors a bit more. What was your thought process, and like, how'd you keep it? Like, you just use it as an influence, and then you just make it your way. Like, what do you think?
Plein air painting is really hard, and honestly, I'm a bit out of practice. This was my first time in a long time doing it, so it is definitely a struggle. And the first thing you'll notice anytime you go plein air painting is that there's just way too much to paint. You have to simplify things massively. Like, you have kind of a limit in the amount of time you can spend on it. The lighting is going to change really fast out there, and you have to make up a lot of stuff to make it work quickly enough. And so there's a lot of, like, all right, how can I be efficient about this? Put this down in the right way. You're working in oils. And as I said, oils can get really muddy and really way too thick, way too much paint super quick. And you're always fighting against that. Like, yeah, you need good brush strokes, but you also don't want to put too much paint on it too early, especially if it's going to be slightly wrong, because you have to manage to fix that all in one session. And that can be a really big balancing act of, like, okay, how do I make this look right, read right, in a decent composition in a couple hours? And so it's a huge challenge, but also a lot of fun. It's where I got a lot of my roots for landscape painting from, is going out and doing paintings like this. And you learn a lot about colors and lighting and value and stuff like that. Sometimes like a little bit of color shift will happen in what I'm painting, because maybe I didn't bring enough tubes of paint. So maybe I don't have that color in my spectrum of what I can do with the colors that I have on my palette. So sometimes you'll notice, like, it shifts a little bit towards, like, oh, it's kind of greenier than the other thing, or oh, it's all a little bit bluish, because that's what I've got on my palette. Also, like, the colors you see while you're standing there are going to be a fair bit different than what a camera is going to pick up.
Yes,
which is part of the value of going out there and doing it, is, like, I love studying from photos. I think they're hugely valuable and you can learn a ton. But at the same time, there is stuff to learn from going out there and painting it yourself. There's a feel to it that I don't think you can quite capture from a photo.
Mm-hmm. So let's just do like a couple more. This one was cool. So these are very like.
Oh, but this is AI. This is me cheating with AI.
Oh no!
I know this was me. I think it was last year. I was like, all right, I'm kind of curious about AI. What can I do with AI? Can I make some cool images with AI? And so I started fucking around with. I think it was Midjourney mostly at the time, and I had a lot of fun doing it. Like I didn't find it. I found it kind of like photo bashing, but to an extreme degree where I liked the end results, but I didn't really love the process of doing it. Like
Yeah.
I find AI interesting and I was like, maybe it'll be fun. Honestly, I didn't find it that fun to make images. I found it really cool for getting ideas and getting inspiration for things, but generating these images was like, okay, cool. And yes, I can make them significantly better by painting into them, and I can make them a little bit more like I would like them to look. But at the same time, it's not, I don't feel deeply fulfilled making stuff
Yeah.
like this.
So how much of it is AI versus you painting on top?
They vary depending on the pieces. I feel like both of these were fairly heavy on the AI. Like maybe they're probably like 70% AI. They're more AI than me painting. So yeah, just because again, I was playing with that workflow of
Yeah.
like, okay, this is interesting. I'm less like, burn AI to the ground because it's evil. Like, sure, it's probably a little bit evil, and yeah, these corporations are totally evil. That's fine. But artists are flexible, like especially in the professional world, and artists love playing with new tools. Like I remember when photo bashing came out, and people got like fucking destroyed online for photo bashing because they were like, that's terrible, that's copyright infringement, all this sort of stuff. And now it's just accepted industry standard. Like times change, people adapt. And
Yeah, this is what Aaron Lemonic was saying as well. Like it's just the same. The main thing is the scraping without artist approval. That is the evil.
It's shit. Yeah, like I totally agree. Like all my images are in there, and I know it, and I'm like, that was kind of a dick move, guys.
Yeah,
you really shouldn't do that. But
yeah, and I've also discussed with people. I'm like, you know what? AI would be cool if it scraped my own images that I told it to, and only I get access to it.
Right. Yeah. Like those are, and that's the direction I think it'll go. Like, I would be shocked if Wizards has not considered at some point using the tens of thousands of images that they own the copyright to outright and not throw those into an AI. Like,
well, the issue
AI
is that so this is the issue. Like with EA, they're pro AI and stuff, and, but it's just okay. You're going to be using all the different artists that you have working at that studio, and you're going to be scraping their work, even though it's your property.
Right.
So that means in the end, are you trying to get rid of those artists?
Right. And realistically, corporations totally going to do that. Like they want an artist that's going to be more productive than somebody else. And turns out an artist with AI is probably going to be able to generate like 10 images a day that look pretty convincing. And that's terrifying, but also maybe that's just the way things will go. I have no idea. Currently, I feel like AI went from bad to like, oh, wow, this is amazing. That's super interesting. And then it's sort of like flatlined at, no, it's just kind of the same dull images.
Yeah.
Like it's not doing anything interesting, which I think is like, I don't think people are discussing that enough of like, these images are beautiful. Like AI generates beautiful images, but it doesn't generate the image you want. And I don't think people are crediting artists and themselves enough in
it's the art direction. You can't direct it.
Exactly.
I was playing with it at the beginning stages. Like these are some cool ideas, but like everything looked the same. You knew it looked like AI, and I was like, well, I guess I could just use the ideas.
Right.
But then it's just like, what's the point? Like you can just use real life references. You can help with composition, but then it's just like, well, then why don't you just check out other art on ATMO
Yeah.
or
Right.
or anywhere to just check out, be inspired by compositions.
Right.
I mean, there are plus and positives
Yeah.
with it, but the scraping without our permission is the real evil and fucked up part. And
the other thing that annoys me is that I swear, like some of the models, you put in my name and generate an image, and it's clearly based on art that I did 15 to 20 years ago. It's terrible stuff.
God.
And I'm like, damn it, at least use my good stuff. At least make it look like a good painting. Like, come on, you're making me look like shit here. You get like these shitty amateur digital paintings. Like, damn it, what are you doing?
And then it probably has your signature in it as well, because I've seen that with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the way to kill it is all studios banding together saying we're never going to use it, or lawsuits with copyright issues. And I think China had that, where they said everything's copyright, you can't use it. So we'll see if it comes to the
I
US.
think there's honestly going to be a taste thing that I think it's going to self-resolve in some ways. So
it's just another bubble that's happening right now.
I think so, because I think like I will scroll through and I can already just tell when something's AI. And
well, I got tricked up on these.
Sure, it
but
happens.
Now that I'm looking at it, I can see.
But now you can kind of see it, and also I feel like these have the advantage of being slightly older AI. I feel like AI has solidified into fewer styles because they're so focused on making pretty images, and the range of pretty images has gone down. Like part of something I loved when I was doing some of the original like tests with AI was, especially with the stable diffusion stuff, it was able to imitate like old masters, like painting modern subjects really well. And you just can't do that anymore. Like Midjourney and stuff will just be like, no, it's going to generate a normal looking painting. It's not going to generate like these cool older styles and these varied looks to things. It's kind of going towards this cohesive look, and it's not that interesting of a look. It's a pretty image with no like character or life to it. So honestly, I think it's going to self-solve itself away because it's going to be able to generate one sort of image. And it turns out that studios want more than that. They want like something different. They want something interesting. They're not going to hire a designer just to be able to generate images. Like,
well, this is why I don't support it on the site, because you're not going to get a job. You have to know everything. You have to know the fundamentals to do any of this stuff. You can't just be like, I'm an AI artist and boom. Yeah. No, you're not. You can't even be a junior and try to skip levels to do. No, you have to. Like I know artists like at ILM, they use AI sometimes to help them with ideas and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they're masters. They know what they're fucking doing.
Right. Yeah.
You can't just cheat your way into it, because we all like in the end you're gonna get exposed.
Right.
Like, with all the art direction that goes on and everything. Like there was actually a game studio who was trying to do everything with AI, and then of course they shut down.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You just can't.
Yeah.
It's delusional, but I mean, who knows in the future? But let's let this be the last one over here. I really like this.
Thank you.
Everything about it. It's really cool.
Thanks.
I was just curious. I wanted to know the water. Like, what color did you start at the base, and like how did you get these? Like kind of what they call the juice.
Right. So before I did this painting, like I've always struggled with painting water just like every other artist. And so I did a few specific studies of just waves, just like cool wave photography, and just to kind of get the shapes, get the feel, get the form of it, but also get like, okay, what kind of crazy color variety do people like see in waves? And I really loved the look of light kind of coming through waves and the glow you kind of get in the shadows there.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to start getting some of that. So starting kind of play with that glowing eminence of light from it, both the sort of warmer tones coming through, but also these punchy, saturated, cool tones.
So what's the base color you're using for the ocean?
Just generic blue. It probably would have been like that. Probably that darkish, mid-tone-ish gray, blue. And yeah, it just would have started there and built everything off of that.
So you would just say like, all right, bright blue over here, then break it up with dark paint on top of it.
And a lot of back and forth, a lot of like, okay, how does that look? Zoom out. No, that's not quite right. Zoom back in, try something else. A lot of painting back and forth to try to get these things.
Yeah, this is dope. That's cool. Yeah, that got on Whenever I see people doing oceans for traditional paintings, it's just
Mm.
like, damn, they get these like kind of glowy effects, like
Mm.
just from hardcore painting. And I know that you're not doing any crazy tricks, like you're not doing any dodge and stuff like that, right? You're just doing
Nah.
straight up.
Yeah, this
So
is all just straight up painted.
so that's the interesting part. All right, man. Yeah, you have tons and tons and tons of work. We could keep on talking forever, but
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I churn it out.
yeah, it's great stuff. And I can't wait to see more stuff you upload to
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, I'll get some more stuff on there.
Yeah. And, you can, there's also like everyone gets access to a blog post to post their own blogs. Eventually I do have a products page, but I'm in the works of building a marketplace for everyone to be able to use. So they'll get access to that right now. And then I want to be able to filter out, since everything is like this, filtered out through the students and skill level. People will be able to filter out the packs and all that stuff by like, all right, this is senior to do this, or because a lot of times you get junior and you're just like, is this actually how it should be? Or, you know what I mean?
Right.
So,
yeah.
There's a Discord, so if people want to hang out with me and other artists that I've interviewed, you're welcome to come join us in the Discord. Just hang out and talk. Yeah, this is the FX page over here. Brandon's interview is awesome. It's a bunch of work.
Oh,
cool like videos and everything here. It's the same setup, so everything's just cloned, like the same, like being improved or all this stuff, and you have different categories going on, and that's how it's gonna expand. So when I get the characters and creatures, there'll just be another one up here, and it'll just literally be a duplicate, but just with different categories.
Nice.
If there's any suggestions anyone, you yourself, have for the site to make it better, I'm completely open to heavy critique, to make this, the dream site for artists.
Nice.
So that's what we've got here. Thanks for coming on, man. That was
you bet.
That was fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. Enjoy my home state.
It's nice here. It's hot, but
what area in Virginia are you?
We're near Charlottesville.
Oh, Charlottesville, really? My childhood best friend, he just recently moved to Charlottesville.
Oh, cool. It's a great town. We love it here.
Yeah, the nature for sure. Oh my goodness. Thanks for coming on again, and keep in touch, and yeah.